The younger brother and sister said that only the strong are worthy of her children. As soon as my nephew was born, he gave up breastfeeding. The milk powder should be changed to Sprite, and the complementary food should be fed to konjac. I persuaded her to raise her child normally. My nephew grew up weak and sick and did nothing. My brother and sister thought that I was jealous of her and took my son to eat the house. Replace my stomach medicine with cephalosporin. In the next life, I choose to let go of the complex of helping others. 1. What kind of supplementary food? It's refreshing to eat 2 bags of konjac. My nephew, who was just 5 months old, was so hungry that he cried in bed because he only drank Sprite. The brothers and sisters were impatient, took out a few bags of konjac and forced them into his mouth. It's a ridiculous thing to give a baby Sprite and eat konjac. But I watched coldly, unmoved, and suppressed the anger in my heart. The strong burning sensation in the stomach has not dissipated. In my last life, I persuaded my brother and sister to directly attribute my nephew's dissatisfaction for more than 10 years to my fault. After I couldn't get the 800,000 dowry, I changed the stomach medicine I took after drinking to cephalosporin. The 2 of them watched me struggle to die in pain, and applauded and praised. My nephew was so spicy with konjac that he stuck out his tongue and couldn't cry. The younger brothers and sisters were very satisfied to see this scene. What kind of bullshit parenting experts say that babies should eat complementary foods? I think they are all IQ taxes. I'm a fool of people like you. Do you hear me? The younger brother and sister said to themselves, not paying attention to the blushing of the nephew at all. It's right to listen to your brothers and sisters. You are too stupid to read too many people. My mother stood up and gave an oops sound. He held his nephew in his arms and looked distressed. He xiaohua, that's how you take care of your children. You bitch, if you can't take good care of the child, just give it to me. My mother didn't dare to mess with her younger brothers and sisters. Every time the 2 had a difference of opinion, as long as I was present, she would point at Sang and curse why. She is a good man at scolding the street in the village. She said something unpleasant and scolded. In the past, I felt sorry for her and endured it silently. But I thought that in my last life I was drugged to death by my nephew, and she sent me to cremation on the spot. After that, I took my inheritance and married the other party. He was afraid that I would die and couldn't close my eyes, and he added that he supported me not to get married in order to let her precious grandson eat the family. It's also a good thing for me to die early, so that I don't have to let her precious grandson take care of her in the future. I said reluctantly, it's none of my business. It's not the child I feed. My brother and sister are sensitive people. Even if my mother has a good relationship on the surface, she can still feel my mother's dissatisfaction. I used to hate my mother, but now I don't admit it at all. Do you take care of my child? What's the use of drinking breast milk? Don't get sick like you and make your family have no money. My younger brother and sister asked for a dowry of 200,000 yuan at the beginning. My mother thought it was expensive, so she said that I was always sick when I was a child and lost all my family's money. I still knew about it from my brothers and sisters. Your brothers and sisters are right. You don't take care of our family affairs. My mother was afraid that I would say something else, so she picked up my bag and pushed me to the porch. Xiaohua, it's not your mother. As an aunt, don't go home to destroy the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. I sneered, picked up my bag and left. Zheng Shou has no excuse to leave. It was she who pushed me out, but don't blame me for being ruthless. Before, I felt sorry for her, thinking that the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was not easy. I would bear the malice of my brother and sister alone, and she would be better at home. In the future, I don't believe that the family relationship can be harmonious without me. 2. I just got downstairs and my mother sent me a voice message. Xiaohua, there is no overnight feud between mother and daughter. Don't be angry with your mother. You haven't had time to give your mother a gift when you go home this time. Do you want to transfer the money? She sent a long voice message and I didn't bother to listen to it. I adjusted my mood and was full of guilt. I told her that I would pay 50,000 yuan to the company because of my work mistakes. I wanted to ask her if she could borrow some money. The voice was sent, but my mother didn't reply for a long time. I laughed at myself and didn't let my tears flow down. I have been raising my mother since I graduated from college. After working for 6 years, I accumulated money. I spent 200,000 yuan on her. Now I say I want to pay compensation and she just plays missing. When I got home, my brothers and sisters sent me a message. Don't go home in the future. Our family can't afford to borrow you. If you can't help your brother, you will suck blood in turn, which will make people laugh. This makes me more uncomfortable. Not because my brothers and sisters speak harshly. At that time, my mother asked me for money and planned to ask for credit with my brothers and sisters. Unexpectedly, I cried for poverty. The younger brothers and sisters said this, and it is probably the result of the whole family's discussion. My mother and my brother were afraid of hurting our feelings, so we chose to let our brothers and sisters convey it. I have nothing to do with my brother and sister. I can understand that she is bored. But my mother also. Forget it. Don't deceive yourself and others. The family affection maintained by me alone will not last long. At 12 o'clock in the morning, my mother sent me a message and transferred 50 yuan to me, saying that the 50 yuan was saved by her in 2 months. The power of the family is in the hands of her brothers and sisters, and it is not easy for her to live. As a daughter, she has to be considerate of her mother's hard work. Even if I live a new life, hearing this will still hurt my heart. I can only accept it for 2 generations. My mother doesn't love me. 3. Afraid that I would borrow money, my brothers and sisters posted a lot of moments, which roughly means that no one owes you. I didn't pay attention to it. She didn't give up and forwarded the chicken soup directly in the family group. Women who are not married in their 30s will have a miserable end. I'm the only one in the family group who is unmarried, and she is strange here. I don't want to show weakness and fight back with chicken soup. Parents who have not graduated from primary school and have no knowledge will only cheat their children. After forwarding, I quit the family group. That I'm not worried about offending other relatives. The younger brother and sister-in-law are the ones who study the least in the family group. The 2 of them can't reach the high school textbook together, and they both drop out in the 3rd grade of primary school. The worst of the older generation is to drop out of junior high school. I blocked my brothers and sisters, by the way. 2 minutes after arriving, my mother called me. Are you going to be angry with me? How can you say that to your brother and sister? I don't want to talk nonsense with her and hang up the phone directly. In the eyes of others, the chicken soup I forwarded has no offensive power. But for brothers and sisters, it is a naked humiliation. She doesn't pay attention to diet during pregnancy. My mother couldn't get used to it and couldn't afford to provoke her, so she asked me to persuade her. At that time, I casually said that it was enough to eat according to scientific methods. Just this sentence seems to make my brothers and sisters suffer a lot of injustice. I think I graduated from a famous university and looked down on her. At that time, she was so noisy that she wanted to have an abortion and divorce. When my mother slapped me in the face, the matter was over. Since then, my brothers and sisters have become more and more radical, and the rules of diet are completely against science. The birth of her nephew didn't change her mind. My mother was so angry that the phone was hung up, and the text message bombarded me. Ask me if the book has been read into the dog's stomach. Graduated from a famous school without quality. The younger brother and sister got divorced again, and wanted to take the children back to their mother's house. My mother asked me to go home now and kneel down to admit my mistake. I didn't argue with her, and I blacked her backhand, and I didn't let my brother go. 4. The chicken soup sent by my brother and sister woke me up. I often think that I am a non-marriageist, but many relatives are not determined to give up and always introduce me to my partner. They think I'm stingy, good to my family, and very suitable for marriage. My mother has always been on my side at the family party. I thought she was open-minded, but I didn't expect that she was making the idea of letting her precious grandson inherit my property. I suddenly realized that instead of spending money for my family and being angry, it was better to please myself and enjoy life. My mother asked her relatives to send me a paragraph. Roughly, I lost money from the company because of my work, and they didn't think I was a burden. I was not only grateful but also blacklaced my family for saying a few big truths. If you can't afford to lose money in the future, don't come to them. I'm really angry at these words. My mother sent me 50 yuan to thank Didi. Every time she orders takeaway from my brother, it starts at 100 yuan. I can't ask for a family to take the initiative to cut off relations with me. Don't blame me for being ruthless in the future. After 2 months of peace, I lived a peaceful life. My younger brother and sister learned from my mother and asked my relatives to forward the video to me. My nephew, who was only 7 months old, was very energetic. His big eyes were wide open, lying on the ground and motionless. The relative who spread the word also said that my brother found that his brother and sister were feeding Sprite to his nephew after work, and the 2 almost divorced after a quarrel. This is even funnier. My brother and sister fed Sprite for 7 months. My brother came home every day and found out recently. 2 people are half a catty and 8 tails and no one says which one. 5. My boss's younger brother came back from abroad and hoped that someone could accompany him. The boss is not a local, and her brother is also coming to this city for the first time. Because the boss is a strong woman with a poisonous mouth, which offends many colleagues. Everyone doesn't want to accompany. I don't usually complain with my colleagues, and I am semi-isolated in the company. They logically pushed this matter to me. When I was shopping with my boss and brother, I met my mother and younger brothers and sisters face to face. When my brothers and sisters saw me carrying the latest bag, their mouths were wide open. He also found that his boss's brother was young and handsome, and said in a sour tone, "Handsome man, you are blind. You are an elderly woman. My eldest aunt's private life is a waste." Only one side of the fate, the younger brother and sister are sure that I am taken care of, and by the way, they are also making porn rumors about me. My boss and brother fight back for me. My brother and sister emphasized my private life again, and then whispered to my mother. After she finished speaking, my mother dragged me to the corner. "You are taken care of. Don't you embarrass your family? That's it. Anyway, you also have money. This bag can be used as a compensation for your brothers and sisters." After she finished speaking, she came to grab the bag. I dodged and almost let her fall down. This is the first time I have treated my mother roughly, and she lost control of her emotions. The boss's younger brother stood in front of me, and was unwilling to show weakness with one enemy. My mother, who is a good quarrel, actually fell into his hands. He is so fierce. Be careful of domestic violence at that time. If you don't please your brother, don't expect your brother to come forward when you are bullied. My mother couldn't start peeing me when she couldn't see it. She has been hypnotizing me vaguely since I was a child. My father died early, so she asked me to shoulder the responsibility of my husband. I won't emphasize that my sister wants to give way to my younger brother like other parents. She will only say that her younger brother will protect her sister when he grows up. And now I understand that my younger brother will only protect his sister's wallet when he grows up. My mother still doesn't give up. The boss's younger brother is very clever. He accused my mother of asking her daughter to help him in a loud voice. A lot of people gathered around to watch the excitement. My mother and brother and sister are both face-loving people, and they both slipped away in anger. 6. I asked for a long vacation. Landing in the tourist city, turn off the flight mode, and the mobile phone shows missed calls 99+. 80% of them are called by family members. Counting the days, it should be my nephew who had an accident. Connect the latest incoming call, and my mother's voice is very haggard. Xiaohua, where are you? Tianbao is sick. Hurry up and send money to mom. I learned from the words that my mother was really anxious. But what does this have to do with me? I sighed and told her that I didn't have a penny. My mother was not discouraged. She showed me the way and said proudly, "Anyway, you are taken care of by someone. Sell more, and the money will come." I hung up the phone without saying a word, and my body was tight. This time I completely died. My mother could say anything to make me pay. In this case, don't blame me for being ruthless. What is the cost of my nephew's hospitalization? There is a big gift later. Buy a plane ticket to go home. 7. When I arrived at the hospital, my mother almost cried and blinded. She hugged me and asked, choking, "Xiaohua, what should I do?" My father died early, and she thought my brother was immature. I was raised as a man since I was a child, and I decided all the major events at home. I'll pay for the money and I'll do the work. Finally, my brother is great. My face was full of sadness. According to her tone, I replied what to do. My mother let go of me and looked at me in disbelief. This is the first time I have evaded responsibility, and she couldn't accept it at the first time. You ask me what to do. Shouldn't you pay for medical expenses and use your connections to find a doctor? My mother scolded me in the face. There were many people gathered around, and the more people there were, the harder she scolded. She was tired of cursing and summed up. What's the use of me? I've been raised for so many years in vain. I didn't look ashamed again. He took out the only remaining 50 yuan in cash and said solemnly, "Mom, don't blame me. You take the 50 yuan. It's hard for me to pay back what I owe the company. My nephew is being rescued, and my brother is paying back from downstairs. Then it would be better if you lend me a little more money, Mom. The doctor said it would cost 100,000 yuan for the operation." I looked at the payment slip. My nephew suffers from osteoporosis and intestinal hyperplasia. The medical expenses can't reach 100,000 yuan. When my mother heard it, she got up and asked me to borrow 100,000 yuan. Fortunately, I had expected it and knew that this family would make this calculation. Of course, but the contact number of the guarantor and the family is required. If you and my brother are willing, I can borrow more. Before I finished speaking, my brother interrupted me. He said nervously, "I don't need your loan. Don't think I don't know your calculation." After saying that, he pulled my mother aside and whispered, "Hey, Xiaohua, you cried with your own mother and humiliated me with 50 yuan. Let's see whose daughter has an overnight grudge with her mother like you." The villagers all said that you must have been taken care of by an old man outside. Let that man pay. My mother started crying again. It should be my brother who told her that I was pretending to be poor. He has always been like this. If he wants anything, he can tell me directly. Mei Qiming said that he didn't want to owe me. I asked my mother to ask for it behind my back. When I just graduated from college, my mother suddenly told me that she would transfer 10,000 yuan to her, and buy a notebook to watch the square dance. I used to be a little filial, but I'm not stupid to this extent. After careful questioning, my mother said that my brother wanted to play games. She begged me not to send messages to my brother to question him. My brother just mentioned this matter casually. She wants to buy it and give it to my brother. She doesn't want to burden me too much. I was considerate of her at that time and sent her 10,000 yuan with Huabei. Not long after, my brother posted on WeChat Moments. He didn't rely on his parents and won the full amount by himself. Now that I look back, she doesn't want to burden my brother. What about me? I won't do the same routine for the second time. I'm sure I don't have money. My mother saw that I was soft and stubborn, so she turned her face and didn't recognize anyone. Then don't blame me for making trouble in your company. I sneered and felt very pathetic. I turned my head and asked my mother where my company was. She was stunned. My brother interrupted us impatiently and turned around to ask me to pay the fee. The financial power of the family has always been in the hands of brothers and sisters. If the two of them don't have bad hobbies, they should save a lot of money. The younger brothers and sisters were called to pay the money. They hesitated and couldn't say a word for a long time. Finally, she said that she would ask her brother Sunjun to pay the money. A clear-sighted person will know what's going on at a glance. I'm afraid that the money saved by my brothers and sisters for so many years has not been applied to my mother's family. I'm going back to the company. My mother asked me to take over to take care of my nephew later. Not to agree to her request. After all, there is another excitement to watch. 9. When I came back from the company, I saw at first sight that my sister-in-law was protecting Sunjun behind her. My mother swung her fist at Sunjun like crazy. My brother reluctantly stopped her. You old man, I took the money to pay for your grandson, and you still blame me. My mother threw myself into my arms and cried out of breath. Xiaohua, this beast took your brother's money and said that the child was not saved. Don't treat it. When my brother and sister heard what my mother said, their faces were ugly. My brother is not a beast, and it's normal for me to make up for my mother's house. You often ask Xiaohua to make up for my mother's house. My brother doesn't like to hear this. The four people directly staged a dog bite. I just hate that I don't have melon seeds around me. When the test report comes out, I'll take it to the doctor. The doctor looked at the report carefully and frowned. He went out to question. What do you usually feed your baby? How can it be in the late stage of stomach cancer? These words asked the four people to calm down. Except for Sunjun, all three of them were stunned. It said don't cure it. Let's choose a good cemetery while he's still young. My mother covered her chest and fell into my brother's arms. The doctor glanced around and called my brothers and sisters in to talk about the child's condition. In the face of the doctor's questioning, the younger brothers and sisters did not say a word. I learned from this that the younger brothers and sisters lied about scientific parenting for the sake of face. The doctor's judgment caused misleading and delayed the nephew's treatment. The younger brothers and sisters curled up in the chair and cried in a low voice. In the face of a mother who is about to lose her child, I can't sympathize. But if her self-esteem is not so strong, it will not cause her child to develop stomach cancer. 10. Xiaohua, please persuade your brother quickly. He will give up treatment after listening to that beast. She emphasized that it was Sunjun who brainwashed my brother. But I feel a little outrageous. No matter how good Sunjun is, not to mention that the child is my brother's biological child, how could he give up his son's life because of an outsider? Although I have doubts, I don't intend to take a stand. Just tell them that the child has late-stage stomach cancer. If I get involved in this matter, it may eventually turn into the family asking me to take responsibility. Mom, give up in the late stage of stomach cancer. My brother was silent for a long time and spit out this sentence. Sunjun didn't care. He took out the browser to search and popularize the stomach cancer for my mother. My brothers and sisters feed the baby with spicy strips of Sprite, and the baby was sick and pushed the responsibility to me. 39,103 inch. Although I know this is to make my mother angry, it is suffocating to think of a 1-year-old child with tubes all over his body. My mother was stunned for a long time and looked up to ask for my opinion. My back felt cold and I suddenly felt bad. I just told her that I can't be in control of this matter. The child's biological parents are here. Subtext, it's nothing to do with me. The younger brothers and sisters came over, and also told my mother that they would take money to treat her. 11. I don't care about this matter anymore. I didn't explore the final decision. The family's life seems to be in a dead cycle. My brother and sister gave up the child completely, and my mother asked someone to borrow money everywhere. Now the intensive care unit costs 10,000 yuan a day, not to mention other expenses. My mother borrowed all the money she could and turned to find my company. She was afraid that I would refuse, so she knelt down to me as soon as we met. Xiaohua, you don't want to see your father with his children and grandchildren, do you? She grabbed the corner of my clothes and shook it gently. The eyes are empty and numb. I felt sorry for myself again. My mother began to morally kidnap me for her grandson. Fortunately, there are clear regulations in our company that video recording is not allowed. If that person records it and publishes this picture on the internet, I won't suffer from online violence. My mother is determined to want me to take money to treat my nephew's illness, so don't blame me for being cruel. I directly asked the security guard to send her out. The eyes of the colleagues around me were not friendly. I barely squeezed out a smile and returned to my seat. The boss came out and told them to watch less. She called me to the office. I'm very anxious and afraid that I will lose this job because of my mother. Don't worry, I think you handled it well. Tell me if you need anything. Hearing this, I was shocked at first, and then expressed my gratitude. My boss is called an unkind tigress by some colleagues, so I am worried about the intersection with her. Now it seems a little unnecessary to worry. When I left, my boss told me not to think too much. Although I usually don't speak well in the company, she can feel my work attitude. She appreciates people like me. My eyes are a little blurry. Some colleagues in the company often say that she is a jealous person. If a woman is embarrassed by her, she must be jealous. But now I don't think she will take this kind of thing to heart. My boss sent me a message to get a general understanding of my family's situation. After a long time, she told me that my brother might gamble online. She also asked me if I needed a vacation to deal with this matter. I politely refused her kindness, which had little to do with me, and I didn't want to waste any more time on it. 12. My mother was kicked out by the security guard last time, just like evaporating from the world. She was silent for a long time and suddenly appeared in my rental house. Xiaohua, your brother and sister-in-law are missing. Tianbao spark is over. Can you accompany your mother to preside over the funeral tomorrow? When my mother saw that I hesitated, she slapped herself in the mouth. The sound is very loud. I felt that I had a headache and couldn't move for a while. I reluctantly persuaded myself to go home to preside over the funeral. The next day my mother took a taxi to pick me up, and she handed the urn into my arms. The urn is very light. The door was locked in an instant, and the car drove in the opposite direction. Seeing that I noticed the abnormality, my mother robbed my mobile phone. If you are unfilial first, don't blame your mother for being cruel. The man is a little old, but he is very good to people. Hearing these 2 words, my heart was broken. Force yourself to calm down. One step at a time. Now it is a society under the rule of law. The car arrived at the destination, and the surroundings were very festive. My brother and sister pulled me out of the car to control me. You are so old and someone still gives you a dowry of 300,000 yuan. Have fun. Although this man beat his last wife to death, you were beaten by me since I was a child. You should be very resistant. My mother was afraid that I would not give up, so she continued to brainwash me. My heart beats faster, and I'm still thinking about what to do next. Teen. My brother and sister pressed me to worship heaven and earth with the man. Before I finished worshipping heaven and earth, the sound of police cars sounded around. My mother was stunned at first, and then she reacted and slapped me angrily. Bitch, how dare you call the police? When my brother heard the sound of the police siren, he panicked and let go and wanted to find a place to hide. I broke free from my brothers and sisters' hands and quarreled with my mother to take back my mobile phone. Push her to the ground with all your strength. My mother became furious when she was pushed down by me. Little bitch, you actually have sex with your mother. Police, arrest this unfilial girl quickly. The police heard the sound and walked towards us. My mother was very proud, but the next second she screamed, because the police arrested my brother and son June. I turned on my mobile phone and there were a lot of unreached calls. It's my boss. Call her back to report her safety. My brother broke down directly and asked my mother loudly why he called the police. Is there no grandson and the son doesn't want it? My mother fell to the ground and muttered that it was impossible. She got up and rushed to me, spitting out a lot of dirty words. As before, the responsibility is attributed to me. The police also arrested her. My boss called the police and said that she was involved in human trafficking. She was not convinced and questioned the police why her mother couldn't sell her own daughter. The police disagreed with her and turned around to take her into the police car. When I arrived at the police station, I knew that my brother not only gambled, but also cheated money everywhere. Someone called the police to file a case. My brother disappeared directly, and the police are investigating his whereabouts. If my mother hadn't done this, the police wouldn't have been able to catch my brother for a while. My mother sat in a chair with dull eyes and didn't want to believe that she personally sent her son to jail. 14. My brother is engaged in fraud, and the amount is about 100,000 yuan. The victim said that as long as the money was repaid, a letter of understanding would be issued. My brother and sister asked my mother to buy a house and pay it back. My mother just wants to leave the money for Tianbao to see a doctor. No matter how her brothers and sisters persuade her, they don't agree to sell the house. Finally, the two looked at my mother and stopped talking. Sun Jun sneered on the side. I'm still looking forward to your short-lived turtle grandson, who died long ago. My mother's eyes widened and she froze in place. The younger brothers and sisters slapped Sun Jun as if they were reproaching. He is not cowardly either. In order to stimulate my mother, he told the story of the matter. My mother has been busy finding a marriage for me these days, transferring the money to my brother and asking him to pay for medical expenses. My brother wanted to gamble when he got the money, so he directly went through the discharge procedures for his nephew. My nephew left chemotherapy and cried out in pain. My brother gambled and lost money, thinking that the child's crying made his luck dirty. My brothers and sisters haven't taken care of their children much, and they also find it very annoying to cry. Together, the two threw the child directly into the utility room. The next day, I found that the child was out of breath. That I didn't say anything. This matter is very complicated. Isn't it a kind of luck for a child to leave this family? My brother was very impatient when he saw my mother frozen in place. He asked his mother to take the money to pay him off the debt quickly. The grandson was gone, and the son had to save it. My mother was so angry at this that she pointed at him and couldn't take her breath. He closed his eyes and fainted. My brother and sister and I took her to the hospital together with the police. You paid the medical expenses, and I'll go home to sell the house. Hearing what my brother and sister said, I stopped her directly. What do you mean? Don't want to sell this house. 15. If you don't let me sell the house, Sunjun and your brother have to go in. Don't stop me. My brothers and sisters are impatient. My brother owes nearly 100,000 yuan, and my mother will definitely be able to take it out. The younger brothers and sisters sold the house all the time. It turned out that Sunjun also owed a lot of money. This pair of brothers and sisters are expecting this house to pay back. This house is in my mother's name, and no one can sell it except her. Hearing this, the younger brothers and sisters were impatient and cursed that they would not die and run down to pay the fee. The younger brothers and sisters came back with resentment. I've paid the fee. You stay and take care of me. I shook my head and refused, and explained to her that whoever was greedy for the house would take care of it. Maybe it was because of something in mind that the younger brothers and sisters stayed to take care of them with resentment. I don't care too much. What does it have to do with me if she is upset? Go to the police station to record a transcript and turn back to the rental house. The next day I went to work in the company normally, and my boss knew about it. I was given a noon off and asked me to buy something to visit my mother. I'm always reluctant to go to the hospital. I bought some fruits opposite the hospital and passed through the garden. I accidentally heard a familiar voice. It's brothers and sisters. She had to carry someone on the phone. I thought something was wrong, so I recorded this scene. Don't worry, I have 100,000 yuan in my hand now. When the old lady sells the house, I will divorce him and go to other places with you with 200,000 yuan. This sentence has a lot of information. It seems that my brothers and sisters have a new partner. I got useful information and left here quickly. When I came to the ward, my mother was already awake. In less than a day, she had gray hair and was much thinner. When her brother and sister came back, they found that she was sober and urged her to get up and sell the house. I was laughed at by this. I'm really in a hurry. I'm going far away. When my brother and sister urged me, they gave me a ginking. That it means to tell me not to meddle too much. I shut my mouth. She doesn't have to worry. The good play will appear next. 16. My mother decided to sell the house under the soft grinding of her brothers and sisters. That afternoon, she asked to be discharged from the hospital. In fact, I'm afraid of spending more money. In the past, I would feel sorry for her and bear all the medical expenses, but now I can only watch coldly. The housing prices in the cities we live in are not high. Although the house is in the main urban area, it is also old and dilapidated. In addition to the rush to sell, it's good to have 400,000 yuan. My mother felt distressed and felt at a loss, but her brothers and sisters were urging her. She doesn't care so much. I think she just wants to fly far away with the money now. I smiled without a word, and I didn't intend to expose her idea now. After all, there are many people to be lively. My brother and Sunjun were sentenced to a 1-year suspended period. The people in the room are very happy except for my mother. The younger brothers and sisters were even more excited and asked my mother how to distribute the next money. My mother was annoyed because she lost money by selling the house, and she exploded when she heard this. Blaming brothers and sisters knows how to use money to make up for the family. The younger brother and sister didn't get used to her and sprayed directly. Why do you say that I made up for my mother's family? At least my mother didn't pretend to be sick and cheated my daughter out of money. She also bought me a gold bracelet during the spring festival. It's not like you spent 9.9 by a fake one for your daughter. In order to stimulate my mother, she took me as an example. Those words that my mother used to pune me once turned into bubbles at this moment. I looked at my mother, and she turned her head directly and stopped talking. I turned around and wanted to leave, but was stopped by my mother. Xiaohua, don't listen to her nonsense. Mom is. My mother's words stopped abruptly. At this moment, she could no longer weave beautiful lies. My brother pulled her back and said impatiently, "All right, don't pretend to have a deep love between mother and daughter. Hurry up and divide the money. Give my sister more, and I won't give you a grandson if I don't have enough money." 17. You give her 50,000 yuan. Auntie, it's not that I'm talking badly. Whose daughter needs to be supplemented by her mother when she becomes an adult? My mother still has 200,000 yuan left in her hand, leaving 50,000 yuan for retirement, giving me 50,000 yuan, and finally 100,000 yuan for my brother and sister. As soon as the distribution results came out, the younger brothers and sisters couldn't stand it first. I held back my smile. If it hadn't been for her ridicule, my mother might not have found out. Your mother can buy you a gold bracelet, and I can also share the money with my daughter. My mother refuted her brother and sister. My brother and sister cried out and shouted, "If my mother dares to give me 50,000 yuan, she will divorce my brother. I don't want to see this scene. Tell her to calm down. I will send you a video, and after watching it I will give up the 50,000 yuan. My brother and sister were satisfied with my words and praised me for being sensible. You didn't send it to me. I didn't see it. You also have to pay. My brother and sister gloated and blamed me, but I didn't see my brother's gloomy face at all. The applause was very loud, and before the younger brother and sister could react, They were pressed down by my brother. This is an emotional problem between the two people. I don't want to go to the police station again and make transcripts for them. He came forward to block but was stopped by Sun Jun. Let my brother-in-law beat me. My sister's rough-skinned and thick-skinned can't be beaten to death. When the beating is serious, I'll ask for more money. The younger brother and sister, who was originally pressed by my brother, heard Sun Jun's words and directly pushed my brother away. I'm your own sister, is that what you think? She should have been hurt by Sun Jun's words and questioned the other party madly. At this moment, I suddenly understood the psychological activities of my brothers and sisters. She doesn't like me and likes to secretly poke and compare with me. I help my mother's family to be PUA. She helps my mother's family, and my mother's family worships her as an ancestor. She has always thought she is inferior to me, but now her dream is directly broken by her own brother. It's normal to have this kind of gap. Whoever gives me money, I will regard him as an ancestor. Sun Junman said indifferently. These two are really worthy of sisters and brothers. They know what to say that can stab people's hearts the most. Sister, I'm really not talking about you. As a woman, why are you cheating on me? I'm not married yet. It's not funny to spread it. I feel very happy. The words that my brothers, sisters and my mother once attacked me were returned as they were. I thought I couldn't empathize when I said that. Now it seems that you don't know how painful it is if you don't stab yourself with a knife. I didn't bother to look at the family's affairs, so I turned around and left. 18. The next night, my mother called me and asked me to go back to my hometown for a reunion dinner. Her tone was full of pleading. She didn't allow me to refuse and hung up the phone directly. Send a message to tell me that if I don't go back, I will be hanged in front of the company the next day. I had no choice but to go back for this reunion dinner. Sun Jun is also here. My mother and sister-in-law are busy in the kitchen. They both want me to sit at the table and just wait for enjoyment. The first dish was meat, which was put in front of me by my mother. I was slightly stunned when I saw this, because this was the first time my mother put meat and vegetables in front of me after my father's death. In the past, there was only a plate of vegetables in front of me. My mother said that girls should eat less meat and more vegetables. A feeling of being flattered. My mother served the last dish and made soup for everyone in turn. Except for me, everyone has a bowl of soup in front of them. Fortunately, this kind of thing often happens. My heart is numb and I don't care. My mother told everyone to drink soup. Seeing the crowd drinking the soup, she smiled with satisfaction. Realizing that my brothers and sisters were staring at me, I picked up a piece of meat in front of me. Today's meat, my mother chose braised pork. My father and I like to eat braised pork, but my brother hates it. After my brother passed away, my mother never made braised pork again. She would think of my father when she saw braised pork, but I knew it very well just because my brother hated it. Seeing this piece of meat in this table of dishes, I feel bitter and tasteless. I put the meat in the bowl and said that I was full after 2 bites of rice. Take the rice bowl to the kitchen to wash the dishes. In the first year of my sister's marriage, she thought I was dirty at work every day, and asked me to go home for dinner and wash my own dishes alone. When I came to the kitchen, the restaurant suddenly fell into a dead silence. When I washed the dishes and came out, everyone fell to the ground and spit white foam. This scene scared me dumbfounded. I called 120 first and then called the police. 19. No one was rescued. As the only survivor, I am very suspected of committing a crime. He was repeatedly interrogated for several days and finally acquitted me. The police told me that there were 2 kinds of poison in the meal that day. One is in the meat dish and the other is in the soup. They learned from my mother's mobile phone that the poison in the soup was poisoned by my mother. I don't know who took the poison in the meat and vegetables. It takes a few days to compare the fingerprints. My mother also explained on her mobile phone that she didn't want to be buried with my father, and felt ashamed of my father. I didn't educate my brother well. I have an indescribable feeling in my heart. Everyone I hate is dead, but I can't be happy. To be honest, I even hate my mother, but her last return made me breathless. In my previous life, I longed for maternal love, but she never looked at me except for money. Now what are you doing before you die? I sent 4 people to cremation. When I was thinking about how to deal with Sun Jun's parents, the police told me that Sun Jun's parents had passed away a few days ago. At that time, Sun Jun borrowed usury to gamble and was visited by the creditor. The creditor wanted to scare Sun Jun to pay him back, but his parents were scared to death. Sun Jun was still crying and pretending to be his grandson for a second. When he saw his parents die, he immediately changed his face, asked the creditor to pay for compensation, or call the police. It is illegal to collect usury. In order to save trouble, the creditor compensated Sun Jun a large sum of money. Sun Jun took the money and gambled again. At that time, his brother and sister called him, and he planned to hide in another city. The money paid that day was my mother's card swiped by my brother and sister. My mother is always confused and doesn't remember this card at all. She is very smart and comes up with the password. I will take care of things, adjust my mood and return to work immediately. I have been delaying for a long time in this matter. It's time to understand thoroughly. Point 20. My boss took the initiative to give me a long vacation. She is really my great benefactor. Just when I was so grateful, she made a request to me. Asked me if I want to get to know his little fresh brother. Full text finished.